name is KJ, and you're listening to the Supernatural Opinions podcast, where some things in this world are supernatural. My pronouns are she, they, and this is the podcast where I talk to my fellow Supernatural fans about Supernatural, and we share our Supernatural opinions. If everybody's good, I'm good.
Define good.
Ready to start.
Okay, that'll work.
Okay, I'm going to start then. This week we're going to be talking about Supernatural Headcanons, a reminder that discussion episodes are open to all seasons and episodes, and this will definitely contain spoilers for episodes including and beyond Season 2, Episode 10 Hunted, which is what we covered last week. Today I'm being joined by my guests Meredith, Abigail, and Jenn, who were here like 3 weeks ago. For us it's been 2 minutes, but it's good.
How time flies. You're recording.
Yes. But Meredith, remind everybody who you are.
Yes. I am Meredith. I am still here, and my pronouns are she and her.
Awesome. And Jenn.
Hi, I'm Jenn. She, her, and it's good to be back.
We're glad that you're still here.
Yeah.
And Abigail.
Hi, I'm Abigail. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm just so stoked to be here today.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We like to spread that supernatural podcasting wealth around.
We will have just changed our name at the point I think this episode comes out, because I'm thinking this is...
But yeah, so that's fun. I will make sure that I have the updated information in the episode description on Abigail's podcast, because they are doing some rebranding over there.
Thank you.
Before we start talking about some supernatural headcanons that we have, I want to talk about the purpose of headcanons, what they are, why they exist, why they're such an important piece of the supernatural fandom in particular. So this is my version of the mythology section. Canon is the source material. In our case, it's the 327 episodes that make up Supernatural as a series. And headcanons are the little bits of fanon that we make up to supplement the canon. And nobody else has to believe them except for you, which means that if anybody has any problems with any of the headcanons that are talked about, you can bring those complaints directly to me, so I can tell you to turn around 180 degrees and survey the vast amount of off which you can fuck. If you want to be mean about anything, just don't be mean. But if you really, really feel like you need to be mean, you can take that up directly with me. My social are at the end of the episode. I just don't have time for you to be harassing any of my guests, so just take that up with me directly.
Just go off, KJ. This is great.
I want to watch KJ fight someone.
It is a sight to behold. Also, she's tall and she's got sharp elbows.
Yeah, I do have sharp elbows.
And if nothing else, you can bite. You can always bite.
Supernatural has 327 episodes, and you would think that this would be plenty of time, but as we've noted on this rewatch podcast, some things just go unresolved, unexplained, unexplored. And that leaves us, the viewers, with 3 choices: to either accept that there are things that we'll just never know, or to wonder endlessly about the things that we don't know, or to make up something else that satisfies that need. So here we are with all the things that we've made up. So yeah, let's talk about some headcanons that we have, or some headcanons that we like, or some headcanons that we just feel like talking about, even if we don't necessarily subscribe to them. I learned doing this prep that I'm a little bit picky about my headcanons, particularly anything that exists within the show's timeline. I want them to make sense within the canon. That said, a lot of times the fans know the show better than the writers, and the canon is sometimes stupid and needs to be ignored.
Yeah, the canon is inconsistent sometimes too, where
it can be very inconsistent.
Abigail and I did a whole episode of their show where we just talked about some Stanford era headcanons, and it was really fun. It's honestly why I wanted to do this episode. Because we had so much fun recording that.
Yeah, it was so fun. Go listen to that if you want to hear more very specific, detailed headcanons about a 3-year period.
Yeah, exactly. A headcanon that I know I wanted to hear some about that Jenn has gotten some notoriety about recently.
No.
Which one is
Jenn had a headcanon that Ben's father was John Winchester, and I'm sure that Jenn is sick of talking about this. But
no, actually, so what's funny about that is I made that I said it on a live.
Yes.
Because someone had asked, do you think Dean was really Ben's father? And I said, what'd be really fucked up is I kind of think that, it was John. And I said this before we started recording, because there are some headcanons that it's do I believe this? Am I going to die on this hill? No. Is it fucked up, though? Sure. So I'm here for it.
It's so funny.
For that one, I made a video, and it got way too many views, and so many people were explain yourself, keep talking. I'm no, why do I need to? And now, here I am.
I will be honest, the other day I was on AO3 looking for something entirely unrelated, and I came across a fic from 2015 where that was exactly the scenario.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't think I'm the only person who's had that as an idea. So
No.
I'm not going to say, like, it was me. Like, I piloted this ship or whatever. But, yeah, I was honestly surprised more people hadn't thought that was, like, a potential possibility.
I had never really thought about it. Once you, like, said it, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense.
I hate that it makes sense. I hate that.
It was like, I mean, it was the late 90s, right, when Dean meets Lisa, and they're actually, speaking of inconsistencies in canon, right, way back in the pilot, Sam seems surprised that Dean's hunting on his own, and he's like, I'm 26, dude. But in this, I think we were led to believe when Dean met Lisa, he was off on a hunt, and John and Sam were, like, also, like, separate, you know?
But that wouldn't track with the timeline.
So there's, like, that idea there, but...
They do establish at one point, I remember a line, I think it's in Bad Boys in season 9, where Dean says to Sam, like, oh, like, that's what we took. Like, he implies really strongly that there were times that he, like, would disappear or be gone, and Dad, like, John would have said, oh, you know, Dean's here or there.
Oh, yeah, they were just gaslighting
else.
Sam. Sam's, like,
So,
whole
like,
childhood is inconsistent.
I wonder if the fact that, like, Sam doesn't know that Dean's hunting on his own is not because Dean wasn't hunting on his own, but because, like, they were telling Sam it was something else.
Yeah, I think Dean said that sometimes when John was pissed at him, John would just be like, I don't want to see you, go away.
And then, I mean, Dean, what else does Dean know but hunting?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Depressing.
Absolutely.
I mean, their whole lives are just very depressing.
I mean, most of our headcanons are probably going to be slightly depressing because that's
how we roll.
That's how this show rolls. It's just what it brings out in us.
Your misery is just too fun to watch.
Yeah.
We need it to continue for 15 years. Let's go, boys. Let's go.
To quote season 2, episode 8, your misery is kind of the whole point.
I have one that I want to talk about that Abigail and I kind of talked about, and because I mentioned it briefly in My Time of Dying when we covered that episode. I have like a headcanon / like theory about Dean dying from a heart-related condition, all being linked to like his like death book and everything. And I don't know how much of a headcanon this is, so much as just like an interpretation of the facts. But I did want to talk about it. So Dean, his very first like near-death experience is in season 1, episode 12, Faith. He has heart damage caused by a heart attack, and then he goes on to have several heart-related near-death experiences. In 201, he flatlines in the hospital. In Yellow Fever, the ghost sickness is supposed to give you a heart attack, and he almost dies. In Appointment in Samara, Dr. Roberts stops Dean's heart for like 7 minutes. In First Blood, when they make the deal with Billy to get out of the government facility, their heart stopped. And then in season 13, episode 5, Advanced Anthology, Dean stops his own heart, and Billy then takes him to her library, and she lists for Dean 3 of the deaths that are in his death book, and she lists them in this specific order, where there's 3 deaths, and the first one that she says is heart attack, and it pretty much continues in that fashion. I couldn't think of any more off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean that there isn't more between those two, all the way up until despair, when Billy decides to kill Dean herself, and then he just starts having a heart attack while Cass drags him down the hall. So I just have a theory that like that's how Dean was always intended to die.
I adore this theory.
I agree with it.
For so many reasons. One of them being that, like, in Faith, I also just love this theory because of, like, queer headcanoning.
Yep.
Because in Faith, that very first instance, like, Dean's life is traded for the life, like, the person that dies instead of him is, like, a gay man.
Yes.
And, like, that's really, really tragic. But it just, like, starting that heart attack line with him, with, like, that very distinct connection between those two characters, and then tracking that all the way through, and, like, I think of the line, obviously this line applies to Cass, like, all on his own, but, like, the whole line of, like, too much heart was always Castiel's problem, and if you tie that into this, like...
Then he gets paired with the guy with the faulty heart.
Yep.
That's right. I'm like the doctor. I've got some to spare.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, too bad Jordan's not here. She would have loved that.
I have another like little fun one that Cassie and Dean actually did stay in touch for a while. I think up until about the time that Dean actually reconnected with Lisa the first time. I don't think it's like related. I don't think he like reconnected with Lisa and then like he stopped talking to Cassie. I think just like naturally. I think that when Dean made the deal in season 2, I think he just like started cutting people off left and right.
He was doing his goodbyes to her in season 3, saying goodbye to people.
Yeah.
That's like the last time he sees the last time he talks to Cassie.
Yeah, so I just think that he was like reconnected with Lisa, and then, you know, the next like 800 times that we need to reconnect Dean with like a family aspect is with Lisa and Ben. But I just like to think that they did just like say goodbye on the side of the road and just like never speak again, because clearly they intended to speak again, and I choose to believe that they did.
Yeah, well, that's a good one.
I read like this gorgeous fic that was about Dean and Cassie like reconnecting. I think it was actually, it might have been a season 15 fic or like a fix-it fic, but it was like this scene of the two of them like running into each other in a diner like years and years later and reconnecting and talking about like him sharing about Cass. And yeah,
I love that.
Oh my god. That sounds so great.
Really sad.
I have one from one of my TikTok friends, JJ/Jensen, whose is at Priestley67, who I've mentioned a few times on this show. He had a theory that Chuck just kind of like screwed things up a little bit in his like notes, and it caused a whole bunch of problems. But his theory is that like Adam was always meant to be the Michael sword on Earth 1, and that Dean was actually the Michael sword for the Apocalypse world, and Chuck just like temporarily got confused while he was writing and wrote them kind of like wrong.
So that'd be cool.
Super interesting. He has a whole video on his like TikTok thing now. He put the whole thing in my comment section, and then he was like, "No, I'm just gonna make a video." So you can go watch that when I inevitably screw up the explanation. But basically, because Adam has a different mom, both Dean and Adam are technically firstborn sons, and they're from the Winchester line, which is the recipe for Michael. Adam says yes to Michael, and Michael ends up like chilling in Adam for like a decade, and Adam's basically fine. And you might recall in season 5 when Lucifer was in a not perfect vessel, Nick was like melting, but Adam was good for like a decade. He was Gucci. Everything was fine.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm really happy for Adam. Dean only ever says yes to Apocalypse World Michael, never Earth 1 Michael. Like, they weren't supposed to be in each other's stories. It's a really interesting, like, headcanon theory. I had never heard it before, so I was interested when it was commented on my video asking for headcanons.
I love a good meta headcanon, too. I feel like there's so much with Chuck specifically that you could do.
Yeah, as a writer also, like, I'm like, yeah, of course, like, you can mix stuff up. Like, I forget things all the time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
so we have so many
I
charts.
don't think Amara was like a thing. I think Chuck like wrote in Amara.
Interesting.
Oh fuck, did I do it again?
I love that.
God damn it. Yes.
You think that's about a couple of people too, right? Like, I think you said this about Lee. Yeah.
And a friend of mine said that she thought that Chuck wrote in Lisa, or at least augmented her enough that she would agree to let Dean stay with her.
Yeah, that is pretty out of character for any single woman to just be like, yes, come live in my home with my child.
That and Daphne with Emmanuel Cass. That's what a friend had said.
I just think Daphne was a psycho.
I think so. I mean, if I like just found a naked Misha Collins on the shore of my, like, I don't know what I would do. Anyway, back to the Amara thing.
I think she saw her opportunity and took it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think one of the interesting things, and by interesting I mean frustrating things about Supernatural, is you have like sort of this is how the world works. This is the world building here. And then suddenly you have, like, actually, here's this extra thing that happened that totally, like, negs everything else that we had learned about. And I think what Chuck does, maybe as a way to explain this, like, with Amara, is, like, you have all these other pieces of mythology that humans have kind of created. And so you have in different religions, like, I think in Japan there's one where it's, like, two siblings that, like, created the world and stuff, and a couple other ones have it as well. So maybe whenever Chuck just writes himself into a plot hole, he's like, okay, where's like the other mythology about this shit? Oh shit, there's like some creation myths where there's like God and sister God. Okay, I have a sister now. So
actually,
it would explain a lot about why it's so weird, all of her well, so weird that we don't get her at any point before, and also so weird all of the interactions that she has with humans, specifically Dean. Like, that makes a lot of sense if she's a narrative piece that Chuck is trying to like shoot.
Actually, even in Christianity, like really ancient Judaism, there is evidence of like a heavenly mother of sorts.
Yeah, and I know,
and also like my church nowadays believes in a heavenly mother. She just isn't discussed very often.
Yeah, and I know sometimes within like the Holy Trinity, they talk about the Holy Spirit potentially being in a female form or taking female pronouns, depending on certain translations.
Interesting.
But I think I first heard this as like a writing tip back with Tolkien, I guess, which is how he got from like the Hobbit with like the ring in the Hobbit into Lord of the Rings, but just like he, never intended to write Lord of the Rings, but he looked back at